continue with others topic, okay, for our revision purpose. And before we do that, okay, I also would like to update you on the progress for our class. Apa dia, Mah? Ada apa-apa ke?
Oh, tak ada. Tutup Kak.
Okay, dengan empat saya sudah. Okay, bagi make sure saya tak dengar. Okay, alright. Now, as for tutor, starting from this week onwards, okay, there will be no more tutor, okay, and I would like you to use the hours for tutor, okay, every Wednesday, to do your own self-revision. And we are going to continue to have an online lecture, okay, until perhaps next week, or maybe we see, okay, if there is need for us to have that on our final week, which is week 14, then we are going to have it on week 14, or else we just end up next week. Okay. Next week also we are going to take a few more topics, okay, to revise, and I think that will be the final lah, inshallah, unless we see a need for us to meet up in the final week. Okay. All right. Now, speaking about today's topic, which is on the international law and diplomacy. This topic, basically we have explored a numbers of subtopics, okay, such as the sources of international law, the enforcements, okay, and then the types of the international law, and then we also look also a little bit on the approach, okay, that being used in diplomacy, and not to forget also about the foreign policy. Okay, so these are the few main subtopics that normally you need to cover for your final exams. Let's start first by look at into the concept of international law. So basically, as you can see on the screens, okay, international law being defined as a body of rules and principles which are binding upon state in relation with others. Okay, in other words, it is a set of law. Okay, you can say so. It is a set of law. Okay, which has been agreed. Okay, consensusly. Okay, unlike law of nations, okay, law, international law, it requires, okay, mutual consensus, okay, from all party involved. Kalau undang-undang negara ni dia you suka ke tak suka, as long as it being approved by the parliaments, okay, endorsed by the higher authority, then it will be enforced automatically. Tapi international law ni, okay, it requires somehow mutual consensus, okay, from the relevant parties, or the orang kata apa, the affected parties. Okay, maksudnya kalau kat sini negara-negara tu kena setuju lah, okay, untuk orang kata apa, melaksanakan ataupun menguatkuasakan international law tu, or else then international law tu will be seen as a meaningless. Okay, and in fact, okay, this international law, okay, unlike national law, international law, okay, it used to guide and also to monitor, okay, we can also say in that way, to monitor the relationship between a nations. Okay, just imagine, okay, if we need a law in the countries, okay, to control or to monitor human behavior, so the same things we apply it at the international system, okay, where we need a set of rules and regulations to make sure, okay, the relationship between state or the other actors in the international system will remain in the harmonies. Okay, again, okay, if we look at into the arguments that been put by the realists and others theory, okay, when there is no world governments, okay, so definitely international law is a very needed, okay, to ensure the stability in the international system. And speaking about the international law, okay, international law can be divided into two categories. Okay, the first one we call it private international law, and the second one is public international law, which I'm sure you should be clear. Okay, what's the difference between both? The former, it is being used, okay, to solve or to settle, okay, any private issues. Okay, normally when I say private issues, okay, it refers to the non-government matters. Okay, if it is involved a public matters or so-called government matters, then the matters will be resolved, okay, by using the public international law. So these are the two main difference, okay, that differentiate between public and also private international law. But of course, if you read the articles and also the others reading materials, the scholars, okay, will figure out to you, okay, what are the difference, okay, between both private and also public international law. Okay, and then speaking about the sources for the international law, okay, there are few sources of international law, as you can see, okay. Some international law being taken from the treaties that has been signed, okay, by the countries or by coalitions of countries. Okay, for instance, okay, in 2001, okay, the Balkans countries in the Europeans, okay, has a signs, okay, anti-ballistic missiles, okay, where basically that treaties, okay, has also being enforced in the forms of rules and also law in the Europeans to ensure that none of the countries, okay, will highlight or will directed, okay, the missiles weapons, okay, towards one another. Okay, it is being regarded as a symbol of threatening, okay, neighboring countries, and of course it also being seen as a provocations actions. So that's why, okay, they decide, okay, not to even develop, okay, the ballistic missiles weapons, okay, in the European countries. So that's for as an example how a treaty that has been agreed, okay, being used, okay, or being upgraded to be a law. So if let's say in the future ASEAN countries assigns a treaties, okay, on certain aspect, and that treaties, okay, can be upgraded to or can be converted, okay, to be an international law. So that's number one. Number two, some international law also derive from the customs or from the traditions, also called law of nature. Okay, for example, okay, attacking other countries or conquering other countries, it is against law of nature. So that principle also somehow being uh, take into the international law, okay, as a set of law. Okay, general principles, for instance, okay, also another sources of the international law, whatever that has been agreed consensusly by majority of the countries or community can also be used as a sources of law. And last but not least, legal scholarship. Okay, and the writing, the proposal, the suggestion from the scholars can also being take, okay, and included, okay, in the international law as well. Speaking about the enforcement, pelaksanaan undang-undang antarabangsa, yes, as I said, okay, it is not an easy thing, okay, because if we look into the reality of our present international system, the absence of the world governments or the higher authority in the international systems, okay, requires the commitments and also participations of all actors in the international system to ensure the implementations or the enforcements of the international law will be effective and also efficient. Okay, but no doubt in certain cases, okay, some of the countries or actors, okay, might violate, okay, whatever that has been agreed earlier. For instance, in 2003, okay, the actions of USA towards Afghanistan and Iraq, for instance, okay, has shown that sometimes, okay, there are countries, okay, who openly claims to be a very democratic countries, countries that respect rule of law, okay, against, okay, any aggressions, actions to others, neighboring countries or whatsoever, but they the one who violate the international law. Okay, of course we are expecting whatever conflict or issue, if it is requires an oppressive manners to be solved, okay, at least it being done, okay, in the collective way, as what being done, okay, during the Gulf War in Kuwait in 1991, where the international community, okay, has collectively, okay, set up a so-called an alliance army, okay, or some call it as a macam apa peacemaker, okay, and being sent to the Middle East, okay, and somehow this team also being used to stop Iraqi bombings over Kuwait and also others neighboring countries. Okay, so this is the enforcements of the international law in general. And if you like to also look at in our country context, we also has been rely on with this international law. In fact, from the very beginnings of our independence periods, I still remember in 1965, in one of my readings, how Malaysian governments has used the international law principles to criticize Indonesians campaigns confrontations policy towards Malaysia when we would like to form Malaysia in 1963. And when we have a crisis, for instance, with Indonesia over Pulau Simpadan territories, we would like to claim, our ownerships on towards the islands. So again, we brought the matters, to the ICJ. ICJ means International Court of Justice. And of course, ICJ used the public international law to resolve the dispute, and finally, we are able, to owns Pulau Simpadan, and include it as a part of our territories in Malaysia. The same thing is also being applied, in the case of Pulau Batu Putih. So that shows, how important international law. And of course, international law also is closely related with the diplomacy. And speaking about the diplomacy, if you refer to the definition that being given by the Sir Ernest, diplomacy refers to the applications of intelligence and tactics, to the conduct of official relations with governments of individual state. So which means that when you speak, whenever you discuss about the diplomacy, it is not a tools, that being used, to avoid the conflict, but rather it is a tools, that somehow uh, protects the interests of the nations. It is also a tools, for you to bargain certain things, especially in the economic aspect where you perhaps need some things from other countries. So diplomacy definitely will be used. It will be used as an instrument for you to get whatever you want it to be. And speaking about the forms of diplomacy, there are numbers of forms of diplomacy. For instance, a gunboat, cultures, economics, shuttles, and also public. I won't explain this in details because I already did that, but I urge you, to make sure that you know how to explain each of these forms of diplomacy together with an examples. Who knows, it might come out in your final exams. Later. And lastly, we would like to look at under this chapter is on the foreign policy. Speaking about the foreign policy, it refers to the strategy used by the governments to guide their actions in international system or international arena. Um, every country is whether the countries decide to be very passive, try to isolate themselves from the international community, but you will see there will be one person in charge that will be managing the foreign policy or foreign affairs on the behalf of the countries. And of course, speaking about the foreign policy, is not just a paperwork on how you build relationship with other countries or with international organization. It also being used as an instrument of diplomatic bargainings. It also being used as a propaganda. It also being used as a tools for reward and also economic sensation. So foreign policy, it is not as paperwork. Most of us, we thought that, it is a paperwork, that guides the relationship between nations. No, no, it is more than that. And there are numbers of factors that will influence a country's foreign policy. For instance, geostrategic. Okay, so whenever you like to make a decisions, okay, on over the international issues, or whenever there is a crisis or problems, okay, which requires your decisions, you are going to take these factors as one of your main considerations. Okay, so whatever things that you plans to decide later on, okay, you need to make sure it would not give any harm on your nations, particularly your territory. Okay, so that's what we meant by the geography strategy. Okay, territory ni pun guys, you don't look at it from a very narrow perspective. When I say territory, okay, it also include, okay, your neighboring countries. Okay, that's why if you look at into Malaysia, okay, why we urge other Southeast Asian countries, okay, to sign so far treaties in 1970s, simply because, okay, it will be meaningless if we the one who fight against nuclear weapon, but the other countries in Southeast Asia, okay, develop nuclear weapons. So how we can ensure that this region will be safe and will be remain in peaceful? So that's why, okay, we urge other countries like Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, even Manila, even Vietnam during this those times, okay, which being controlled by the Communist Party, okay, radically, okay, aggressively, but they agreed, okay, to sign the treaty. So that's how we look at the concept of the geo strategy. You don't only refers to your own territory, but also others' territory as well. The best, you look at it from the regional points of view. That will be much more safer lah. Okay. All right. Number two is a political structure. A country's political systems or country's political structure, okay, do influence, okay, their approach, okay, towards international community or towards the international system. Okay, for instance, okay, we can see, okay, countries, okay, which being use authoritarian political system, okay, has more tendency, okay, or orang kata apa, possibility of adopting a very aggressive or very radical approach, okay, in the international matters. Okay, we can see, for instance, in the case of Egypt. Okay, now Egypt, okay, even though it has claimed to be a democratic countries, but we know, okay, the military, okay, still behind, okay, the governments. The same things happens in Myanmar. Myanmar is another best examples, okay, how, okay, the military governments, okay, do influence, okay, their approachings, okay, towards the international community and also towards the international matters. Okay, not to say lah that democratic countries, okay, has a very best foreign policy. In some cases also, okay, democratic countries, okay, might become even more worse than this authoritarian system. But the point that I would like to highlight here, how political structure will influence the foreign policy of the countries. Demography, speaking about the demography, always remember demography is not only refers to the social, but rather, okay, it also do include religions, customs, okay, populations, okay, ethnicity. So all of these elements definitely will influence foreign policy of the countries. Speaking about that, if you like to take, okay, why Middle East countries, okay, even though they always have a conflict with one another, but they still maintain their relationship because they have a similarity in terms of their religions, because all of them are the Muslim countries. Okay, the same things, okay, in the context of the South American, okay, even though this area contains, okay, with the diversity of the political systems and governments, okay, but yet, okay, they still able, okay, to maintain, okay, their harmonies or their relationship with one another. Reasons why? Not only because of the geographical area, but also because of the history, okay, that being shared, okay, by these countries, okay, in the southern American continent. National security, of course, okay, when we talk about the safety of the nation, safety of the peoples, okay, this thing definitely will influence, okay, the foreign policy of the countries. You won't make any relationship with countries, okay, that threatening your borders, okay, countries, okay, that will uh, kata apa, cause okay you okay to be engaged in the war and etc. This morning for I have a very good discussion and presentations, okay, with my international students, okay, where one of the students for presenters on the food security, okay, which it give me okay an idea for the next semester to include food security as one of our topics, okay, in international relation. So for I'm sure you might not be aware about this food security, but if you really concerns okay about our daily life matters, okay, definitely okay you will be disturbing okay with the issues of food security, because nowadays okay uh, every countries okay start to realize that food security okay needs to be tackled, okay, not only for the short period of time but also for the long period of times, okay, or else okay it can threaten okay the security of the nation as a whole, and of course it can also cause the economics of the countries okay to be uh, orang kata apa, goes down. Okay, so that's why okay food security is a very recent, controversial, and hottest issues, okay, if I would like to say so, okay, currently. Okay. Historical fact, yes, this is also another factors that influence the relationship between the nation. Okay, for instance, okay, in our case with Japan, with China and India, why? Okay, we has a very we have a very close relationship with this country due to the historical facts, okay, that been shared, okay, between our countries and these countries. And no doubt, economics is also another dimensions, okay, that will directly or indirectly influence the foreign policy of the countries. As I mentioned to you, okay, during Mahathir eras, okay, in his first premiership, okay, these factors, okay, become the main driven tools, okay, that influence Mahathir's foreign policy, okay, in 1980s and also in 1990s. So these are the things that we discuss under international law and also diplomacy. The other topic that I would like to also discuss with you today is on the international organization, which indirectly we already touched a little bit on the international organizations under topic 4 when we learned on the actors in the international relation. So speaking about the international organization, it refers to an organization with an international membership, okay, which the scope and also the presence, okay, definitely, okay, it's related with the international system, okay. And international organizations, okay, in general, to say, okay, it has an open membership, means that it does not only accept, okay, a government to be a members, but it do accepts, okay, non-government entity, okay, to be a part of it. So that's why some of the scholars, okay, decide, okay, to differentiate between IGO and also IO, okay, which I hope you still can recall what's the difference. So IGO, it refers to the international organization which contains an exclusive membership, okay, for the governments only, and the other one, okay, has an open membership, which means that non-state entities also can be join that particular organization. And the other thing that you need also to be aware of under this topic is on the importance of the international organization. So as you can see on the screen right now, okay, international organizations, okay, serve, okay, a numbers of purpose, okay. Number one is to connect the members, okay. Number two, international organization also will promote and also will build a cooperation between the nations. As an examples of ASEAN, okay, if you look at into the ASEAN charters, okay, we can see, okay, cooperation is one of the objective, okay, behind the formations of ASEAN. So by having that cooperation, so we can ensure the relationship between nations, okay, will always be remains in the harmonious way, and at the same time we can helping each other, okay, to build our economies and also the region as a whole. Security is also another reasons why international organization be set up. And if you look at, okay, into the NATO, for instance, the best examples, okay, of the IO which cater the needs of the security, especially in the Western European countries. Okay, and last but not least, okay, humanitarians also is another reasons why international organization being formed. Okay, I think you by your own you can Google, okay, a list of the international organizations, okay, that really fight and works, okay, for the humanitarians, okay, issues and also problems. And speaking about the features also characteristic of the international organizations, okay, there are numbers of characteristics that you need to take note. Number one, okay, it has a multilateral international treaty, which means that when you have the international organization, it is not something weird or orang kata apa, unique, okay, for you to see a treaty being signed, okay, by the members of that particular international organization. In fact, international organization somehow, okay, it will serve as a platforms to bring two nations or few nations, okay, to sit down together and also to build a very close relationship with one another. I take an examples of the United Nations. Okay, in the case of United Nations, we can see, okay, whenever our Prime Minister, okay, go and have meetings, okay, with others national leaders, okay, in the General Assembly of the United Nations, we can see that Prime Minister, okay, will also conduct, okay, a special sessions, okay, with selected minister, okay, we selected national leaders, okay, in order to have a very close cooperation, okay. So that's how, okay, international organization serve the purpose, okay. Sekejap, saya minum air sekejap. Another features of the international organization charters. So some scholars they call it as a constitution, which I don't really agree, okay, with the word of constitution, because constitution is a too how to it is a too structure, okay, and it does not represent, okay, the actual meanings, okay, as compared to the word charters, because charters in the international organization context, okay, it being used as a framework, okay, to guide, okay, the actions of the members, okay, within that particular international organization. And of course there is no elements of sensations, okay, in that particular guys, give me one few seconds. Ya, saya. Okay, sorry for the interruption. I have a guess. Okay, coming back to the chapters. Okay, so that's why, okay, charters, okay, it does not have any authority, okay, to punish, okay, a members, okay, who refuse, okay, to comply whatever that has been agreed. Okay, so I don't encourage you to use word charters, okay, in your sorry, I don't encourage you to use the word constitutions, okay, in the final exam, because definitely, okay, some examiner will not be agree. As me myself also, I wouldn't agree, okay, if you use the word constitutions, okay, to replace with the word charters. All right. The other things that you need to know about the international organizations, okay, of course, I'm not going to explain all, okay, just few of it, okay, about the equal membership. Once you join an international organization, then you will see, okay, you will enjoy with the equal membership. Okay, of course, if you think that your right has been denied or you have been treated, okay, uh, as not equal like others, okay, members, okay, then you can withdraw from it, okay, no one can stop you, okay. And of course, international organization normally being formed, okay, for the long range purpose, okay. Orang tak tubuh international organizations, okay, for the to meet, okay, with the short purpose need, okay, but it is for the long purpose of need. And speaking about the developments of the international organization, we can see, okay, how difference, okay, between between international organization that been formed before and after the World War II. Okay, where before the World War II it is more idealistic, so it explains why some international organization fail to sustain, and due to the geographical determinism is also another factors. Okay, where the previous international organization, okay, it does not really promote the idea on the global community or globalization, and of course it is not stable, okay, because of the poor structure charters, okay, and there is also less commitments, okay, that being put by the members in that particular international organization. So these are the things, okay, that which I hope, okay, you can read, okay, more on that, okay, in order to make sure that you are able to respond, okay, to the question which it is, if let's say it is coming from this topic. Oh, not to forget also about the types of the international organizations, okay. So we have several types like a demography, economics, regional, and also global international organization. All right, so I think that's the points, okay, that I would like to re-emphasize to you, okay. So I'm open to any Q&A if you have, okay. Is there anything that you would like to ask? Okay, you audible katanya? Ke you tengah tidur? Memang you tak adalah benda nak tanya, mesti dijangka. Okay, alright, tanpa buang masa you all lagi, so you can recite tasbih kifarah and salawatul as before you left the session. Okay, so I allow you to left the session if you don't have anything else to ask. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.